And I want to bring in Dave Levinthal, senior Washington correspondent over at Business Insider. Dave, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. So the vote yesterday on Liz Cheney, really wild, as Megan was just mentioning. 61 Republicans voted to oust her from her leadership position. Only 145 decided that they wanted her to stay. What does that vote say about the Republican Party right now?
It was sort of the ultimate smoky backroom moment. Everything was done with the cameras away, with the reporters out of the room. The notion that this was a secret ballot also, too, was very telling. First thought I had was, imagine if the impeachment trial of Donald Trump was secret ballots. I wonder how many Republicans would be voting differently than they ultimately are going to vote in a public fashion. But the bottom line is that, yes, the Republican Party is trying to walk this incredibly fine line between the party of the GOP establishment, the Liz Cheney wing of the Republican Party, if you will, and the wing of Marjorie Taylor Greene, to some extent, and I think Democrats are arguing this, the wing of insurrectionists in the Republican Party. And there are, be it a small minority, some out there who really truly believe that what happened on January 6th was something that was a good thing for them and a good thing for America. So Kevin McCarthy has a pretty impossible position, but one that he's trying to reconcile, as we saw yesterday.
Yeah, indeed, because if Kevin McCarthy believes he's going to be Speaker of the House in a few years, he needs the Trump faction and the institutionalists to make this work. You can't really anger either one of those sides. So, Dave, that brings us to today. Democrats essentially now going to hold a vote to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments. This is a big deal because now all of a sudden you have Republicans on record then with their votes on whether or not Marjorie Taylor Greene should stay. Just how consequential will today then be for the GOP?
Well, in a practical nature, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is stripped of her committee or she's not stripped of her committee, she's still going to be a member of Congress. She will not have been formally censured or sanctioned or even in the most dramatic of fashions removed from the U.S. House, which the House could do to a member if they find cause for it and get enough votes to ultimately do this. So the Democrats, it is unprecedented, at least in modern history, in the sense that if there is going to be a removal from a committee, it's usually going to come from the party of the person who is being removed as opposed to the other party, in this case, the Democrats removing a Republican from committees. So there's a lot of symbolism to it, if nothing else. Now, the bigger issue here for the Republican Party goes back to what we just talked about a moment ago. It's that they can't afford some great schism. They can't afford a breakup of the Republican Party, even a splintering of small issue in the Republican Party, because that could mean political death for them in 2022. It could mean the Democrats even just having more power than they do right now, which is quite tenuous, especially in the U.S. Senate, where there quite literally is a 50-50 split with Kamala Harris, the vice president, casting those tiebreaker votes. So a lot is at stake, and this is a sort of an early signal of things to come for the GOP.
Yeah, such a good point, because you're right. This gives us sort of an indication of where the party wants to go. I mean, Representative Herrera, of Washington, who voted to impeach President Trump, said that the meeting yesterday about Liz Cheney was not about Liz Cheney. It really was about the future of the party. If you have an overwhelming majority of Republicans voting today to keep Marjorie Taylor Greene on her committee assignments, does that essentially tell you, Dave, that this is a party that embraces the conspiracy theory angles of their party, and that anything that these members of Congress say are not going to be met with any repercussions whatsoever?
For now, yes, it would be a signal that everyone in the Republican Party is welcome, even the fringiest portions of the Republican Party. Donald Trump is a name that we haven't mentioned yet, and Donald Trump is important in this case. Why? Well, Donald Trump has a new political action committee. It's called Save America. It raised about $33 million in the final few weeks of 2020 under the banner of, hey, we're going to save the election. We're going to keep Donald Trump in office. It didn't spend a penny on those efforts. So Donald Trump is sitting on a whole lot of cash with this new political action committee as he's sort of in political exile in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. And what was one of the first things that this new political action committee did? It sent out a poll into the field to poll against Liz Cheney. So I think that's an indication, too, of other things that are going to be going on here, maybe a bit under the surface at first, but possibly bubbling up quite soon. that Donald Trump is going to be engaged in sort of this ongoing roiling Republican, not quite civil war, but definitely civil tensions that is taking place in the GOP as we speak right now.
Yeah, good point, Dave. I do want to talk about the stimulus bill here for a moment while we have the chance. President Biden obviously telling Democrats yesterday he's open to compromise when it comes to bringing down not the actual money amount of all of this, but in terms of maybe targeting the money in different areas better. It doesn't seem like any indication or that Republicans are going to join this whatsoever because they're over $1 trillion apart. Is this really to make sure that Joe Manchin stays on board here, Dave?
Quite a bit. And that's what happens when you have, in particular, the U.S. Senate that is so tightly wound. And one or two votes could be the difference. And one or two senators could be the arbiters of which way this goes, whether it goes up or whether it goes down, whether it becomes reality or whether it falls to ashes. So Joe Manchin, in this case, Democrat, West Virginia, he's a big player. In other things that come forward over the course of the year, expect other names. Susan Collins on the Republican side, Mitt Romney on the Republican side, Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona on the Democratic side. They're going to have sort of outsized power individually because of this tight divide that isn't really a divide. And to the numbers of the stimulus bill, yeah, I think one number to keep in mind very much over the next couple of days is $1,400. And what is that? That's the stimulus bill check that is likely going to come out of this. That's what Joe Biden wants. It seems what Democrats are on board in as they go forward with basically an end around the traditional filibuster rules of the Senate, using what's called reconciliation in order to jam through a spending bill, a budget bill of this sort. That's the play that the Democrats are making, and that's the play that the Republicans are not too thrilled about right now.
Absolutely. Dave Levinthal, senior Washington correspondent at Business Insider. Dave, good insight. Thanks for joining us this morning.